And we all know hockey is a very physical game. And you know, injuries are part of any contact sport. However, concussions are an injury that we're really just starting to learn more and more about. So the question kind of is you know, a lot of people's minds, what are these concussions? What are we really talking about? And I think in a short answer is it's an injury to the brain. And now that, you know, players get injured. They break bones, they get bruised, sometimes they get cut. And those injuries are pretty easy to diagnose, and the treatment for them is pretty standard, especially with broken bones. An x-ray will tell you when the bone is healed and the player is ready to return to action. The problem with a concussion is we can't really see it. We can see symptoms, we can see the signs of concussion, and at that point it's really kind of a guesswork in terms of when is it safe for that player to return to play and to contact. Now in the past we've talked about, you know, 5 to 7 days after the last symptom has subsided, but the medical people and the experience that's being that's seen at the higher levels is actually indicating that maybe that 5 to 7 day time window is a little too short. So the return to play you have to be very cautious with. Some of the indications are it's 30 days or longer, although some players recover much quickly. So if we have a scenario where a player gets his or her bell rung, as we say, or in the other language would be a dinger, but where they're stunned and they're exhibiting some of the symptoms, which would be confusion, dizziness, nausea, vision issues, memory loss in some cases, all of these are really far more common than the instance where the player is actually knocked out and is unconscious for a brief moment of time. Whenever this occurs, of course, the first step is for the coach on the bench is to remove the player from the game and get them with qualified medical personnel and or parents right away, and they should not be left alone once they've left the game. Now at that point, the player's care should go over to the family and to the medical profession. There are other tools that can be used to diagnose this. One is the baseline test. It's really called the impact test, where they all the players all do a computerized online test that kind of gives them a score or a baseline.
Essentially, the baseline testing gives us cognitive information on a person before an injury occurs. Therefore, if a concussion happens, we can then give that person or that athlete the test again following the concussion and have some objective information or some numbers to really gauge the recovery process or the recovery of their brain following a concussion, and provide that the family with specific recommendations such as brain rest or limiting physical exertion activities and things like that during that recovery phase.
Both my son and one of his teammates had similar symptoms where they were real quiet, complained of a small headache, so they really weren't themselves that night. The next day they're perfectly fine. They seem normal, so you send them off to school. And that's the real misnomer or the misleading fact as a parent, is how quick do I send him back? He seems fine, he's doing his homework, he wants to go play with his kids or his friends, and that's really the misleading fact. Without this test and having this baseline, we were just throwing darts in the air of what works, what doesn't.
He dealt with some headaches for a good, week to 10 days following the hit. So he had to take some time off of school. You don't want to rush him back to school and get their mind thinking more than it needs to. You want to just give the brain some time to heal. But, my motto is, anytime a kid takes a hit to the head, err on the side of precaution. You can fix bones and muscles and joints and ACLs and MCLs, but you're not fixing the brain when it goes bad.
Treatment is basically rest. And then the question is for how long? The player will say that they feel fine, and maybe they do and maybe they don't because they want to get back in play. But as a parent, you want to be very cautious with this because once they've had some sort of a concussion or a brain injury, until that's completely healed, they're very susceptible to have another one, and the experience is the second one is far more serious than the first one. It's easier to get the concussion or the symptoms, and it's more serious, and the effects last longer.
You know, there's a lot of risk involved through second impact syndrome, where there can be a risk of death, and there's a risk of long-term disabilities with these concussions. And you know, it's really disappointing when the parents that I talk to, you know, when they want to send their kid back too early, when a kid's still susceptible to a concussion after you just got hurt. So we still got a ways to go in concussion education.
So helmets do a great job for what they're designed. They're never, at least with the technology that we have now, are going to be able to prevent concussions. A couple things that are really critical for prevention of them, however, or at least minimizing them, and number one is skills. The players having great skills, so they're not in a position where they are getting hit hard enough to receive concussions. And number two is rule enforcement.
This evening I called a head contact penalty in the corner with a squirt B team. The player head-butted the player, put him in the box, and after the game, his coach asked what I had called, and I told him it was head contact, and he was unaware of the penalty.
Now, in early December of 2010, in conjunction with the referees from Minnesota, the Referees Association, we have asked them to take virtually a no tolerance position on checks from behind and on head contact. In the past, checks from behind have routinely been called boarding or cross-checking, depending on the outcome of the check. And in many cases, if the player didn't seem to be injured, the offender was given a 2-minute minor. And now the officials have been asked to call the checks from behind regardless of the outcome. And any head contact, they're being asked to call that. And the last piece about this is that coaches need to support the officials when they make these calls. You know, if an official makes a call on a check from behind, and his player skates to the penalty box and he hears his coach go, "Hey, great check, Johnny," the coach is kind of undermining the game. It's undermining the officials and sending the wrong message to his players. Now, whether the coach agrees or not with the call the official makes, it's an obligation of the coach to at least publicly support the call as it's made. You know, in most cases, these are not life-changing, or certainly not game-changing calls that are being made. And typically, they don't impact the outcomes of the game. So coaches, along with referees, essentially really are the ones that can keep very good control of this. Coaches do their part teaching skills and supporting the referees. Referees do their job protecting kids, because that's their job in youth hockey, and calling the penalties as they occur without you know, taking a 2 and 10 down to a 2 and without ignoring a head contact type of a situation. Many teams go the whole season without any players suffering a concussion, especially in youth hockey. But we all really want to be safeguarding the kids as much as we can with you know, good hockey technique, good coaching, and good officiating. The adults around the game are the ones who are responsible for protecting the kids. And I think for those who are really not familiar with the game, they shouldn't be overly concerned because, like every contact sport, you know, occasionally somebody gets a concussion. And we're really, I think hockey is really a leader in the effort to try to minimize these, especially in the youth arena. And I'm very hopeful that we're going to make a lot of progress in this area.